This video is sponsored by Squarespace. Anyone who participates in photography, art, music, writing, whatever form of creativity will know how it feels to hit the wall. The point where you feel yourself forcing it and it's just not happening. Maybe you're repeating yourself, getting too stuck in the minutia of things, or you just don't know where to go next. We all know this as the creative block. Well, it turns out that one of the best solutions for this problem was created in the 1970s. And in today's video, I'm going to show you what is inside this little box here that can unlock your creative potential.
Well, hey man, you want a card? They're Oblique Strategies. Two cards are like, you can think about whatever you want and take a card.
Sure.
What I have here is called Oblique Strategies, and this was cooked up by two heavyweights, Brian Eno, an early member of Roxy Music, ambient music pioneer and producer for people like David Bowie, U2, Coldplay, plus many others, and Peter Schmidt, a British artist known for his experimental boundary-pushing work in the 1970s. Together, they crafted this deck of cards designed to knock you out of a creative rut. In this video, I'll be covering what oblique strategies are, how they work, and why everyone should be adding them to their creativity toolkit. Before you go saying, oh, well, these are probably really expensive, because they kind of are, there is actually a free web version of Oblique Strategies that can just be viewed on your laptop or desktop. It is just a browser and you can refresh the page or click a button to get a new card. So it works almost exactly the same as the physical item, which is obviously always nicer to have. So don't think that this video won't be relevant to you if you don't actually own this physical deck of cards.
When I was working in the studio, when I was in Roxy actually, we were under a lot of pressure because we had a small budget, and under pressure you forget all your best ideas quite often. So under pressure you sort of get into a rut and you think, I've got to get finished, and the panic sort of pushes away your observation. You're not really paying attention to what's going on.
So creative blocks can come from a few different sources. As Eno himself describes, we can feel pressure or deadlines to create certain things, and this is very counterproductive to artists and can sometimes push us to just go to old ways and just create the same way we normally would because it's more predictable and reliable. The antecedent to creative block doesn't always have to be pressure though. It can just be things like boredom or fatigue, especially now with doom scrolling on your phone or being inundated with all these clips and opinions and things on social media. This can lead to you just feeling really dried up inspirationally. Using a lateral thinking tool like Creative Strategies can really train our brain to come at things from a different angle that we wouldn't otherwise get to organically. Let me give you a few examples. Only a part, not the whole. So as a photographer, this one card, this one constraint could be a whole motto for my own photography, as I tend to really come at things from this exact angle. I isolate one aspect of the scene as opposed to, photographing all of it, giving things context, and this leads to images that look a little bit more abstract and different. I talked about and showed an example of this in a recent video when I was photographing a van, and I explained how often in photography I see a lot of people take the more traditional approach of coming further back from something and showing all of the van, or even taking that further by showing all of the scene. And whilst this might be useful, part of your style or conveying the message that you want, it is kind of the default to show. And I tend to go for this only a part, not the whole approach. And a lot of people commented on that video saying that they hadn't actually thought of that. It hadn't dawned on them. So I think this is a perfect example of how good these cards can be for photographers specifically. Sometimes as artists, we feel compelled to do things a certain way because it's what we've already seen and we think that that's the path we must take. But it's important to remember that we have free will, which is something I think that we forget through all aspects of our life. And whilst there are no rules in creativity, we do kind of yearn for some kind of guidelines, but we tend to then look to the greats or look at what everyone else is doing and follow. But I think these cards are a great way of giving you some kind of rule book, guideline, strategy, constraint to follow, which we need. It's sort of like a little bit of a framework, but then still working extremely creatively and varied because all of the prompts are so different.
And then I had a list, but the list didn't work so well because what you tend to do if there's a list, you just take the one that's most convenient.
Yeah.
The one that most lets you carry on doing exactly what you're already doing. So I thought they should be on cards.
A lot of people think of Oblique Strategies as something that you would use in a studio or a musical environment, but really they are 100% applicable to any creative pursuit. You could even stretch to say that you could just use them in your everyday life when you're trying to make a decision. I am going to pull a few cards at random. I haven't looked at them and I don't know what the ones on top say. I'm going to pull them out, read them, and then I'm going to let you know how I would apply them to a photographic situation and go through some of the ways that I like to use these cards in my practice. So, of course, there is the pull a card at random technique. This is one where you simply just pull. It could be from the top, the middle. You could shuffle them around and get all tarot cardy here. Whatever you feel like, you can just pull it out, look at it, and this could inform you before you go out on a photo walk. So say you're going out on your own, you're meeting up with friends, whatever it is, you could do this, read the prompt, and then let that inform the kind of direction and process or thing that you look for or focus on, or which camera you choose, anything like that. So let me demonstrate this for you and pull a card and we'll see what it says. I feel very under pressure. Honor thy error as a hidden intention. This is a brilliant one for photographers because a lot of us are perfectionists and you might be really down on yourself because of some technical inability or missing the shot. So this kind of card, at least to me, my interpretation, which obviously these are open to everybody's different type of interpretation, I would be going out and really embracing any kind of like error or mistake that comes from the day or the creative situation. You could take this in another way and use a camera that's partially broken because we all have cameras that maybe aren't working exactly how we want them to, or there's something about them that is quite sort of like complicated or clunky. So taking that from this, error, mistake, something that's broken, something that's wrong, taking all those things that we're normally trying to move away from and be perfect, be beautiful, be correct, all these things, and leaning into that error side of things. I love this card and I do this naturally anyway. I could probably do with a card that's like, hey, maybe you should brush up a little bit. You could also use this same pulling a card method for something at home. So you might not be necessarily heading out to physically photograph because I know that can be hard sometimes. You might be at home, you might be curating a sequence of photos, you might be putting a zine together, you might be creating a logo for something, your podcast or your website, writing a Substack post and getting really stuck because we can really just get stuck with anything. So you could pull a card and let that help you get out of like procrastination station and just kind of like get on with it. Let's try. Towards the insignificant. So I'm interpreting this immediately as kind of maybe you are trying to make things too grand and too like amazing. And we can do that sometimes when we are making a website. We're trying to make it like really different or really impactful, or logo design for like your podcast, or you're trying to write this really long Substack that's super meaningful. And maybe you just need to go towards something that's a lot more simple and understated, seemingly insignificant to you, but maybe that's just the path that you should be taking right now because you need to just get on with it. Constraints can be so powerful for creatives, and these cards definitely show that. And something like a timeline deadline can be really useful. It can put a lot of pressure on you, but sometimes it can work for you too. So if you are somebody who's been thinking about getting a website together, Squarespace is the place to do it. And you can get a 14-day free trial of Squarespace. And if you get stuck with any of the customizable templates, or you get in your head, like what we've been talking about in this video, you can then look at the online version of Oblique Strategies, refresh, find a card and act on those prompts and use that to inform how your website will look, and then get it all up and running within 14 days. What a fun challenge. Squarespace offers a complete library of professionally designed and award-winning website templates, and a quick survey of your needs and goals with your website will provide you with an easy drag and drop template option to make building a website stress-free. I offer services like portfolio reviews using the inbuilt scheduling tools, and this helps me to increase my income as a creative and manage everything all in one place. So if you are a photographer wanting to sell prints, digital guides, or presets like I do, Squarespace has all the tools to showcase and sell with an online store function that can be set up in minutes. It's so easy. So give your photography the online presence it deserves by heading to squarespace.com for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, go to www.squarespace.com/Lucy Lumen to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.
Well, I mean, it's like I've had a total recalibration of my mind, you know? I mean, it's like I've been banging my head against this 19th century type, thought mode construct, human construct. Well, the wall doesn't exist. It's not there, you know? I mean, they tell you to look for the light at the end of the tunnel. Well, there is no tunnel. There's no structure. The underlying order is chaos.
The second way that you can use oblique strategies is by committing long-term to a card or a prompt, as opposed to the earlier strategy of just like pulling them out and kind of using them at this high frequency. Simply pull one card and let that be your creative focus or direction for a week or maybe a month or maybe even a year if you're like somebody who really loves long-term projects. Let's pull one live in real time and see what it says. Voice nagging suspicions. So we all have that kind of internal dialogue as artists. Maybe there's something that's just really playing on your mind. You've been procrastinating on it. You can't stop thinking about it. I know before I go to bed, sometimes those things will come to me and I'm like, oh, I've really wanted to do that, or I've been thinking about it. This is a great prompt to action a project, because we can have millions of project ideas or series ideas and then not actually action them. So this could be one that just really kicks you into gear and you go, okay, I'm going to actually make a plan for that and work on it for this whole month or the whole next 3 months. Another way that you could do this is by picking one card. So let's choose another one just so you can get the full idea here. What wouldn't you do? So you could take this and you could commit to it long term, but each week do a different interpretation of this prompt, because they all are very open and you can be, interpreting them however you want. So what wouldn't you do? So there's probably quite a few things that you wouldn't do. So maybe, this week you do one of them and then the next week you do another one, and you build up this project of kind of like this bizarro opposite world of the things that you normally do. This is a great one. It's so simple for people who are in a rut, and it can seem probably too simple, but drawing the card out, having a ritual or doing it, on a browser can kind of just be like this voice that you need to tell you to just, what is it that you wouldn't do? Maybe go do that. Another fun way that you could use these cards is using it with others. So as photographers, we're all pretty solitary, and this is something I've been discussing with a few people lately. And I think it's what makes photography quite hard, because you are often on your own. It's not really a collaborative thing unless you're doing portraits or something like that. And I think that can really add to us getting in our heads and then ending up in these creative ruts. So you might have a photo friend. They don't even have to be in your close proximity. They could be online, and you could say to them, hey, let's both pick a card, either online or physically, and then both react to this prompt all week or all month. And then you can find a way to come together. You might just share the images together. You might start a Discord group with some people. I don't know, whatever it is, but you can get more people involved. And I think it would be really fun to see how a group of different people, like 10 people or more, respond to like one of these prompts, because they are so interpretive. This opens you up as a creative, and it feels very like you're getting to see how other people see and interpret things. And that can be really helpful. And it's like that feedback loop that you need sometimes as a creative. I'm going to pull another one and see what it says. Work at a different speed. This is a great one. So for those of you who are long-term project people, like I was talking about before, maybe you can work at a really high speed and like turn something over really quickly, because that's like the opposite of what you would normally do. For me, I tend to work very quickly and photograph very quickly. So, for me, this would be moving slower, and just something simple like that can just completely change and rearrange your photographic output. Here is a clip from Eno himself talking about this really great prompt.
Yeah, work at a different speed.
Yeah, that's a useful one. So that can mean a lot of different things. That can mean changing the speed here, but it also can mean do things at a different speed.
Almost
like work very, very quickly or work very, very slowly.
I hear a lot of people in the creative community and online talking about Rick Rubin, who I'm a big fan of and love. I think he's great, but I really think that Brian Eno is like the OG creative genius. I love him so much. I'm such a big fan of him. And I don't really think that we hear him being talked about enough in the mainstream. And he has so much to offer creatives. So go down an Eno rabbit hole if you've never heard of him. He has just released a new book. I will link to that below. I'm definitely going to grab a copy. It's all about what art means and why we enjoy and create art. So that's another one that could be really inspiring for all of you watching. I will leave links to the cards and anything else that is relevant and that free version below. Let me know if you try this out or if you own the cards and have heard of them before as well. I would love to connect with a fellow Brian Eno fan.